Welcome to Big Sound, Mr. Kneebone.
Cheers, Stephen.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and the business or businesses that you run.
Primarily my day-to-day is I run a business called Isaac Promotions in Auckland. It's a marketing promo company. We also have a distribution partnership with Universal. There's also a record label aspect to that as well, and we basically work with a lot of different bands and labels in local and international coming into New Zealand. Do radio, publicity, project management, marketing, all kinds of basically comms to make sure people want to know what's going on. And then we also have a publishing division. We work closely with Sony ATV and represent their stuff for Sync in New Zealand, as well as have our own publishing company that we sign New Zealand artists for and then kind of export back out through the Sony network. And we also have a small touring business called 40 Days, which kind of part and parcel of that is we're one of the promoters for the Laneway Festival in New Zealand, and then also run separate tours during the course of the year.
Excellent. Are you involved in any other businesses or government organisations?
Oh yes, and I'm also on some government boards, which is always great. I've been chairman of Independent Music New Zealand, which is the local indie trade body. I've been chairman for, I think it's my 4th year, and I've been on the board for a couple of years past that as well. Also sit on the board for PPNZ, which collects all the money for broadcasting for master tape and stuff like that.
Excellent. How large is the New Zealand market?
It's worth about, in US dollars, it's worth about, on the exchange rate, about 55, 60 million a year. So it's pretty small. It ranks somewhere between 20 and 25, depending usually on the exchange rate in terms of market size in the world. Comparatively, I think Australia is 6 or 7 now. There's a pretty decent infrastructure there. Like all the 4 majors have, over a dozen staff working there, and the publishers don't really have offices. There's a couple of local ones like Native Tongue, Mushroom, which is an Australian company, obviously have an office there as well. And then some of the promoters from Australia will have offices there, and there's a lot of local independent operators as well. So it's a bit of an even split between the indies and the majors across everything.
And how important or how autonomous is the New Zealand market? I mean, is it reflective of what's happening in Australia? Is it reflective of what's happening in the US, or does it have its own flavour?
I'd say it's about 60% what's happening in the US, about 20% what's happening in the UK, and then the rest would be local. And then there'd be a very small Australian component in that as well. When I say small, like most of the headline acts that will do really well in Australia will traditionally at least get a release and a good look in for Australia, for New Zealand as well. Some acts do better than others. It really depends on commitments to touring, whether culturally it crosses over. Some stuff just doesn't work in New Zealand, particularly urban and hip hop. The accent issues just doesn't translate. But a lot of the Aussie rock bands have done traditionally very well in New Zealand, and acts like John Butler Trio and stuff.
How important is local content?
It's huge. It's a massive part of it. New Zealand has, there's a government funding for certain projects to achieve more broadcast radio play for New Zealand acts. There's a voluntary 20% local content quota that was brought in about 6 or 7 years ago, and they roughly hit that every year, give or take. Some years just past, some years just below, which people are very thankful for, and it's a great sign of faith from the radio industry that they'd buy into something like that. The government has an organisation called New Zealand On Air that put in funding for radio promotion, music video creation, stuff like that, and they fund certain programs. Like if it's a QMusic show on MTV, they might give a bit of money to help with the production costs to ensure that there's more cultural awareness about New Zealand music.
How important is IMNZ in the cultivation of that New Zealand content?
Pretty key. IMNZ releases about 80% of the local music. Unfortunately, that doesn't translate to 80% of the sales of the market, but of actual volume, it represents about 80%. So they're really, those labels are at the coalface of finding and nurturing and developing those acts, as well as some very big acts as well. They're established and guiding those careers and kind of working along the way. So of all the organisations, they've got the most to do with the actual artists, along with the managers for them.
What opportunities would you see for international acts, whether they be from Australia or from elsewhere, in breaking into the New Zealand market?
Well, it happens all the time. You know what I mean? New Zealand has got this proud history of being this weird little fully westernised market at the bottom of the Pacific, where certain acts have just taken off and done amazing numbers. Like Ben Harper had his first gold record in New Zealand, so did Tool, so did Rage Against the Machine. All these quirky little things, and Massive Attack. Before they had gold records at home, but And then, Australian acts that have done well. We've even had, from small to large, like I mentioned, John Butler Trio's always done really well in New Zealand. Missy Higgins' first record did really well in New Zealand. Man, who else? There's a few. AC/DC, of course. Airborne are doing really well at the moment. But the smaller stuff as well, like Parkway Drive, have always done really well in New Zealand because they've toured constantly as well. We just toured the Butterfly Effect, whose first tour in New Zealand where they never had any radio play or any serious record label marketing or release. They did like 800-900 tickets across 3 shows. That was really, really positive. You know what I mean? Birds of Tokyo just starting to get us set up there. It's all comes down to what you want to put into it,
On the flip side, New Zealand artists taking on the world. What's hot at the moment? What artists are kind of breaking through, and what territories seem to be embracing New Zealand music?
Well, traditionally the first stop has always been Australia because it's close and it makes sense. But I think it's important that most people now realise, and Australians are starting to realise, that the market's actually very different retail base, very different radio setup, very different broadcast, PR, street press setup, all that kind of thing. So acts that are starting to do well here, there's a couple starting to pop away, like Naked and Famous have got a single going, seem to have something going. Dane Rummel seems to have some stuff going at the moment. Just trying to think who else. Computers Want Me Dead have got a little bit of a buzz going as well. There's plenty of acts, and then there's more established acts like your Lady Hawks, Crowded House, Neil Finn, stuff like that.
How important do you find events like Big Sound are in helping to bring New Zealand content over to Australia?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's my 5th year here. Always come here because we work with a lot of Australian partners, both export and import. So it's a good chance that everyone's here. Everyone we do business with, well, 90% of the people we do business with are in Brisbane at the same time, which you just don't get that anywhere else, any other time of the year. So it's really important for us, and it's a very laid back conference, which is why I really enjoy it and why I keep coming back, is it's very social, and it's not like Meetum where everything's really formalised and over and over and over, and you're being charged $20 for a coffee and a bloody croissant. But here it's good because there's actual bands playing in actual venues, and they sell a lot of local tickets and people come and all that sort of stuff. So in that respect, it's a really easy place to do business. And then there's always some good international guys here as well. It's like whether it be booking agents or promoters or labels or even publishers, whatever. In this part of the world, it's the key one for us.